The morning sun cast a soft glow over Elmwood Avenue, where the Matthews family had just begun to settle into their new home. Their freshly painted house stood tall, the welcoming porch swing and vibrant flower bed. Inside, Terrence Matthews and his wife Camille were busy unpacking boxes with their two children, Jaden and Maya. They had worked tirelessly to reach this point, and moving into this beautiful neighborhood was the culmination of years of hard work. But as they unpacked, little did they know, a storm was brewing just across the street. Behind tightly closed blinds, their new neighbors, Parkers, were watching. Bill Parker, a grizzled, middle-aged man with a permanent frown, and his wife Susan, a woman who thrived on gossip, stood glued to their window, staring at the Matthews family with disdain. Bill's lip curled as he watched Terrence lift a box out of the moving truck. "Can you believe this?" Susan spat, her voice low but seething. "Black family moving in here. They don't belong on our street, Bill." Bill grunted, his gaze narrowing. "This is supposed to be a nice neighborhood. What if they bring in more of them?" Susan nodded fervently, already imagining the worst. She had spent years building her social standing in the neighborhood, and the arrival of the Matthews family felt like a personal affront. She wasn't about to let this new development ruin the image of Elmwood Avenue. By mid-afternoon, the Parkers had already devised a plan. They started knocking on doors, whispering to the other white families in the neighborhood. "Have you seen the new neighbors?" Susan said to anyone who would listen, her tone dripping with malice. "I hear their trouble. We can't just sit by and let them change the neighborhood like this." A few neighbors who shared the Parkers' prejudices nodded in agreement. "What if crime goes up?" One man grumbled. "We need to protect our property values," another woman added, wringing her hands nervously. Susan, emboldened by their support, declared, "We need to get them out. If we all band together, we can make them so uncomfortable, they'll want to leave." Meanwhile, the Matthews family remained blissfully unaware of the growing hostility. They were thrilled to finally be living in such a beautiful area after years of saving and hard work. Camille, a successful doctor, had grown up in a rough neighborhood and knew what it meant to overcome obstacles. Terrence, a savvy entrepreneur, had made his fortune through smart investments in real estate. The house on Elmwood Avenue wasn't just a home, it was a symbol of everything they had achieved together. That night, as the Matthews family sat down for dinner, a loud knock echoed from the front door. Terrence opened it to find Bill Parker standing there, a tight smile plastered on his face. "Welcome to the neighborhood," Bill said, his voice dripping with false cheer. "I'm Bill Parker, from across the street." Terrence extended his hand. "Nice to meet you, Bill. I'm Terrence." Bill ignored the hand, glancing instead at the house behind Terrence. "We've got some concerns about you living here," he blurted out. Terrence's brow furrowed. "Excuse me?" "Well," Bill continued, shifting uncomfortably, "this is a close-knit community. We've got standards, you see. Some of us feel like maybe this isn't the right fit for you and your family." Terrence felt a surge of anger rise in his chest, kept his voice steady. "We've worked hard to live here, Bill. My family belongs wherever we choose to be." Bill's eyes darkened. "I don't think you understand. We'll make sure you don't feel welcome. This neighborhood doesn't need your kind." Terrence's hand clenched the doorframe as he stared at Bill. He could feel the weight of years of discrimination, the countless battles he'd fought to get to this point. But he knew better than to react in anger. "Have a good night, Bill," he said calmly, shutting the door. Inside, Camille saw the look on her husband's face. "What did he want?" she asked. "He wanted to make it clear we're not welcome here," Terrence replied, his voice tight. Camille sighed, rubbing her temples. "We should have known something like this would happen." The next few days were filled with tension. Susan Parker and her allies began their campaign of subtle harassment. Cars parked in front of the Matthews house, blocking their driveway. Anonymous notes were left in their mailbox, saying things like, "Go back where you came from." Neighbors who once smiled at them now avoided eye contact. But what the Parkers didn't know, what no one on Elmwood Avenue knew, was that Terrence and Camille owned more than just the house they lived in. Terrence had quietly bought up several properties on the block through his real estate venture, holding them as investments. The very people trying to evict them were unknowingly paying rent to the Matthews family. One evening after another, particularly nasty incident where someone had spray-painted the word "leave" on their sidewalk. Parents had had enough. He gathered the neighborhood for a meeting. As the residents of Elmwood Avenue, including the Parkers, gathered in front of the Matthews home, Terrence stepped forward. "I understand that some of you don't want us here," he began, his voice steady but commanding. "But I need you all to understand something very important." Crowd shifted uncomfortably, some avoiding his gaze, others openly glaring. "I'm not just your neighbor," Terrence continued, locking eyes with Bill Parker. "I'm also your landlord." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Bill and Susan Parker's faces went pale. "What are you talking about?" Bill snapped. Terrence smiled. "We own several of the homes on this street, including yours, Bill." The silence that followed was deafening. Bill's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. You can't be serious." "Oh, I am," Terrence said, his voice calm but firm. "So before you tell us we don't belong, you might want to think about where you're standing. We're not going anywhere." The crowd slowly dispersed, the weight of the revelation sinking in. Parkers slunk back to their home, their sense of superiority shattered. As Terrence and Camille stood on their porch, watching the sunset, Camille turned to her husband and smiled. "I guess that takes care of that." Terrence nodded. "People will always try to push you down, but the truth is, everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, no matter where you come from or what you look like." The lesson was clear, and the message undeniable. Treat others with fairness and equality, because you never know who's really holding the keys to your future.